The thornback cubs had been missing for 3 solar cycles. The entire colony knew what that meant. The hunters, those cold-eyed traffickers who sold exotic life forms to arenas and private collections across the outer rim, had struck again. And when hunters took cubs this young, they never came back. Not alive, not whole. But Kaylin didn't accept that. She stood at the edge of the ravine, her thermal scanner painting heat signatures deep within the cave system below. 17 signatures, exactly the number of cubs that had vanished from the nesting grounds. The thornback matriarchs had roared their grief into the night, their crystalline scales dulling with despair. They were massive creatures, yes, apex predators of this moon, but their bulk couldn't navigate the narrow hunter warrens carved into the cliff face. Kaylin could. She checked her gear one final time. Climbing rig, plasma cutter, medkit, and the small pulse pistol at her hip. No heavy armor, no backup. The colony's security force had already declared the mission impossible. Suicide, they'd called it. The hunters were Cravathi mercenaries, known for their brutality and their traps. But Kaylin had seen Rovik's mother that morning, pressing her massive head against the empty nesting hollow where her cub had slept. The sound the matriarch made wasn't a roar. It was something worse, a keening that bypassed language and struck directly at the soul. So Kaylin repelled into the darkness. The first trap nearly killed her. A monofilament wire, invisible until her scanner caught its faint energy signature. She disarmed it with hands that didn't shake, couldn't afford to shake. Beyond it, the tunnel branched into 3 passages. She followed the one with the freshest scorch marks. Evidence of energy weapons used to herd terrified cubs deeper into the complex. Human endurance. That's what would matter here. Not strength or speed, but the ability to keep moving when every rational thought screamed to turn back. Humans had crossed ice ages and deserts, had dragged themselves across finish lines and battlefields. Kaylin drew on that legacy now, letting it fuel each step forward. The second trap was sonic, a frequency designed to disorient most species. But human hearing range was narrower than the hunters expected. She felt the pressure change, felt the dull ache in her skull, but pushed through while her scanner led her deeper. Then she heard them, the frightened chirps and growls of cubs too young to have their armor plating, their voices echoing through stone. The holding chamber was a nightmare of cages, stacked haphazardly, with 17 pairs of luminous eyes staring out from behind energy bars. The cubs ranged from the size of large dogs to small ponies, their scales still soft and iridescent. Several were injured. All were terrified. And standing guard were 3 Cravathi hunters, their segmented armor gleaming. Weapons trained on the entrance they'd known someone would eventually try. Human, the lead hunter clicked in translated standard. Foolish. You die here. Kaylin's response was to drop a smoke pellet and move. Humans didn't have natural armor, didn't have venomous claws or telepathic abilities. What they had was pattern recognition and adaptability, honed over millennia of being the prey that became the predator. She'd studied Cravathi tactics for 2 cycles, knew they relied on thermal imaging in close quarters. The smoke was laced with heat-reflective particles. She moved through the chaos like water, like something that couldn't be pinned down. Her plasma cutter wasn't a weapon, until she made it one, slashing through the leg joints of the lead hunter's armor. Her pulse pistol wasn't powerful, until she aimed for the exposed throat seals the Cravathi thought were protected by their reputation. When the smoke cleared, all 3 hunters were down and Kaylin was bleeding from a gash across her shoulder. But standing, the cubs watched her with those luminous eyes. Easy, she whispered, her voice hoarse. I'm getting you out. Disabling the cages took precious minutes. Her hands worked frantically, bypassing locks designed for security forces. Not for one stubborn human with engineering training and absolute determination. The first cage opened, and a small cub, Rovik, she would later learn, stumbled out and immediately pressed against her leg, trembling. Not yet, little one. We move together or not at all. 17 cages, 17 cubs. Her shoulders screamed with pain and her scanner showed more heat signatures approaching from deeper in the complex. Reinforcements. Humans were social creatures. Pack hunters. They didn't leave their wounded behind. Didn't abandon their young. Every human culture across all of Earth's history, had stories of those who stood against impossible odds for the sake of those who couldn't fight for themselves. Kaelin opened the last cage as heavy footsteps echoed in the tunnel. "Run," she commanded. And the cubs understood the tone, if not the word. They fled as a group, and Kaelin brought up the rear, her pistol barking at the shadows behind them. She'd memorized the route in, and now she herded 17 terrified cubs back through it, past disarmed traps and through twisting passages, her body running on adrenaline and sheer human stubbornness. When a hunter appeared in their path, she put herself between the weapon and the cubs, taking a glancing energy blast that burned through her jacket. She fired back and the hunter fell. When the smallest cub stumbled, exhausted, she scooped it up without breaking stride, carrying the surprising weight because the alternative was unthinkable. When they reached the ravine entrance and the sunlight beyond, the thornback matriarchs were waiting, having somehow known. 17 cubs tumbled out into their mother's embrace. Scales clicked against scales. Relief roars shook the ground, and Kaelin collapsed. She woke 3 cycles later in the colony's medical center. The thornback matriarch stood vigil by her bed, an honor unprecedented in colony history. Rovik, the eldest cub she'd rescued, refused to leave her side. His small form curled at the foot of her bed, one paw resting possessively on her ankle. The colony administrator visited, speechless. "You brought them all back," she said finally. "Every single one. The hunters. They've never lost a catch before. How?" Kaelin looked at Rovik, who chirped softly and pressed closer. "Because humans don't know when to quit," she said simply, "and because they were someone's children. It wasn't strength that had won, not superior technology or firepower. It was the peculiarly human inability to accept that some things were impossible, especially when cubs needed saving. Rovik would follow her everywhere after that, growing into a magnificent thornback who understood that courage sometimes came on 2 legs, with soft skin and a stubborn heart. And the hunters learned what the galaxy would eventually come to know. That humanity's greatest weapon wasn't their technology or tactics. It was that they never, ever left anyone behind.